Hi everyone, in the last video I showed you how to make a ScanNCut cutting file for an embroidery applique design, and I showed you how to do it if you had software or how to do it directly on your ScanNCut machine if you don't have software. In this video I'm going to be making a card and I'm going to use that embroidery. I just want to actually cut my base card, so I'm going to go into patterns, into basic shapes and choose a square, and I'm going to make the size 4.5 by 4.5, and I'm going to set that on the mat. Now I'm going to go into pattern interval and take the pattern interval up to 10, which is the most it can go, and then I'm going to go to add pattern, back into the basic shapes. I'm going to find a small rectangle and I'm going to just set that on the mat for now. I'm going to select it, choose edit, object edit, and rotate it 90 degrees and say OK. And now I'm going to resize it. So I'm going to untick maintain aspect ratio and I'm going to make it 0.37 of an inch high, and I'm going to make it 0.25 of an inch wide. Okay, and I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I think I want about 12, but I can sort that out if I've got too many or not enough. So I'm going to say 12 and say OK, and it's put them all kind of in a diagonal, and I want them all lined up. It's evenly spaced them because I set the pattern interval at 10, but I want them all lining up on like a horizontal line. So I'm going to say OK, choose the 3 red boxes, choose the first box and isolate these 2, and I can do that because one of this section of rectangles that I want to select is highlighted in red. So by dragging the box around it, the machine now knows I want to choose what's in that red box. So I'm going to say OK, OK, go into the directional arrows, go into the align and align them all up along the top. And then I'm just going to I'm going to say OK, and I'm just going to bring my box in to see. Now I've got too many, so I'm going to take away a couple of them. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to use the arrows to jump to the next set of designs. I'm going to send 2 of them to the rubbish bin. And then let me just put that over. I think that's going to be plenty. So now I'm going to use the directional arrows again just to select one of them. I'm going to use the 3 red boxes. This second box again, isolate those rectangles so they're all now selected. I'm going to say OK, object edit and group. So now they're all grouped. So I can now position them where I want to position them. So just for ease, I'm going to bring my 4.5 inch square up into the top left hand corner, and then I'm going to select my next. I can't get hold of them without getting my hand in the camera, so I'm going to use the directional arrows. So with those, what did I have? I made 12, so I've got 10 small rectangles. So with those 10 small rectangles selected, I'm going to choose the directional arrows and I'm going to scoot them over to the left and down to the bottom. Then I'm going to say OK. I'm going to select everything on the mat. So I'm going to choose this box now. Say OK, go back into the directional arrows, back into the align and line them up horizontally. No, that's not what I want. There we go. So I want them in the middle, but I want them at the bottom. So I'm going to say OK, OK. Just select those. And again, I'm just going to move them down. So I know this centrally to the 4.5 inch square. I just want to bring them down near the bottom. So I'm going to zoom in and scroll down and zoom to 200%. So I can see where they are. So they look okay there. I want them, they look about maybe 1/2 inch from the bottom of the 4.5 piece of card, and I've got them centrally. So I'm going to say OK, 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 and I'm going to save that file into the machine. It's telling me it includes a grouped set of patterns, which is okay because I don't want to ungroup them. So I'm just going to say OK, and it's now going to save that into the ScanNCut machine so that I can cut it, and then hopefully I'm going to be doing some machine applique on it. So I'm going to say OK. I've got a piece of Stampin' Up! Basic white thick cardstock on my mat. I'm going to do a background scan and press start. So I'm just going to choose the 3 red boxes and choose both designs, say OK, object, edit and group, and then I can move them down as a group onto my white piece of card that I can now see on the screen that I've just done the background scan for. So now I'm just going to cut this. So I'm going to say OK, OK, OK. I've got my regular blade in. I'm going to say cut and I'm going to start. Okay, so that's finished. I'm going to say OK. Okay, so that's finished. I've just taken it off the mat and put it on one side. I'm just going to load the mat and I'm going to choose another pattern. So I'm going to go into basic shapes, choose this scallop square at the bottom left, which is BA-A011. I'm going to take it up to 5 inches and say I want to, and set it on the mat. Now, I don't know why it's telling me there's not enough room on the mat, so I'm just going to set it for now. Then I'm going to go to edit, object edit, and say I want a second one. So I'm going to put one of them in the very top left and tucked in, and then I'm going to bring the other one up, make sure it's at the top, and I'm just going to slightly overlap it. I'm going to go object edit and zoom. I don't want to overlap it that much, so with this one on the right selected, I'm just going to nudge it over just so it's only just overlapping. Now I'm going to say OK, use the 3 red boxes to select everything on my mat, say OK, object edit and weld. And it says OK to weld pattern, this is irreversible. That's how I want it to look, so I'm going to say OK, 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 select and cut. So I'm going to load another piece of card onto my ScanNCut mat and cut this out. So here it is. So I'm going to take this one off, and this is going to be my base card. Here's my other one, and this is hopefully going to sit on here, but this bit is the one that I'm going to do the machine embroidery on. So that's what you're going to see in the next part of the video. So there's my 3 hearts that are going to make the design for the front of the card. So I've got my little 4x4 hoop. I've got a piece of 70-gram cutaway stabilizer. I don't know whether that's right or not, but that's what I'm using. And I'm thinking that the cutaway might be a little bit stronger than the tearaway, so that's why I'm using that. Now what I've also done is I've printed out my design from Embroidery Essentials, and that's one of the beauties I think of having some software to make the designs, because you can kind of see it better on screen and you can position things, you know, looking at a hoop on the screen in like full size, and then you can print the design out. And I print all my designs out from Embroidery Essentials. I just find it helps me with alignment. And you can see it's got crosshairs that denote the middle, and then this line goes right through the design vertically, horizontally and vertically. This is the piece of card that I'm going to stitch on. So I'm going to use this printout to kind of position it on here when I put this in my hoop, to then make sure that my design is in the correct place, because I've got these cutouts at the bottom. So I'm going to trim this up, and I can see where my cutting track is through the paper. So I'm just going to line the top of that vertical placement line in the track and cut. And I'm going to do the same on the other side, just so that I can get the trimmed piece as close as possible, you know, to the actual size. That's just for me. You don't have to do it this close. You can, you know, leave it, you know, just roughly cut it out. It's entirely up to you. I just generally try and you know, cut it down as much to size as possible. So that's what I've got now. So from here, I'm going to put my card that I'm going to stitch on into my hoop, and I'm going to try and centralize it as best I can, and I'm going to stick this down with a little bit of adhesive tape, because this is all going to get cut away, so it doesn't matter whether this, you know, sticks permanently to this or not, because it's going to be stitched to it anyway. But I want to try and hold it in place as much as possible while I'm stitching on it. So I'm going to try and find the side I want to, you know, cut on. There's generally always one side that kind of looks better than another when you cut a shape with your ScanNCut. So I'm just going to line this up, and I can see the grid marks actually through my stabilizer from my grid mat underneath. So I'm just going to put that on there. Then I'm going to position this on here, and I'm going to set the machine up to find the center crosshair. Then I'm going to remove this and stitch the basting stitches for my 3 pieces of fabric, which are going to go on like so. So I'm going to take all that over to the sewing machine. So I've switched my embroidery machine on. I'm going to go into embroidery, find my USB stick that's already in my machine, and I'm going to choose my file that's got all my embroidery information on it. I'm going to click embroidery. That sets it on the mat. So now I've got the machine set up with white embroidery thread, white bobbin fill. I'm going to put the hoop into the machine, and I'm going to position my printout where I want my design to stitch, and I'm not going to stick that down. I'm just going to leave it sat there, because I'm only using it as a guide to set the needle in the middle of the design. So now I'm going to come back to my screen on my embroidery machine, and using the directional arrows, I'm going to move the needle until it's over that center crosshair on my stitch out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the foot down on the machine so that I can see through the hole better, and then, just as I say, using these directional arrows on my screen, I'm just going to keep going up until I find the middle of that design, and that looks perfect. So now I can take this away and I can start to do the stitch out. So hopefully this will work. We'll soon find out. So now I'm just going to, the needle's already threaded, everything should be set. I'm just going to press start, and it should now stitch the 3 placement stitches for the 3 different hearts I made in Embrilliance Essentials. Now, I don't know why it's not stitched the other 2, but I did go back in and alter this design in Essentials after I finished filming the screen share. So whether I've forgotten a step, I'm not sure. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here and hit the plus on the needle, and then I'm going to hit the plus on the bobbin, which takes me to like the next step. What I want the next placement stitch for the next heart. So that's the second heart, so I'm going to stitch that one now. Then I might have to do the same to stitch the third, and then I'll have to go back and just enter each step manually. Put the foot down and hopefully stitch the second heart. As I say, it looks as though I'm probably just going to have to do, now my threads come unthreaded, so I'm just going to rethread the machine. I'm going to put the foot down. This is only a placement line, so it doesn't actually matter that there's no stitches in here. I can see the holes in the design, so I'm just going to carry on and let it carry on stitching this heart. Okay, come back to the screen. I'm going to do exactly the same as I did before. I'm going to hit the plus button until I get to the next heart, which is the one I want to do the placement stitch for. Put the foot down and go. So now I can see the 3 placement areas for my fabric. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to apply some adhesive just to hold these in place, because these are, as I say, completely unbonded fabric. My hands may get in the way a bit here, but I'm just going to use that placement line, bring you up without getting my hands in the way, to put this fabric down. And the placement line is exactly the same size as the cut line. The printout was bigger because that had the blanket stitch all around the edge, but these 3 are all the same. So I'm going to pop that back in and lock it in place. Now I've got to go to step 2 for the first heart. So I'm going to hit the spool with the minus until I get back to step 2, because step 2 should be the tack down for this heart, this first heart. So let's put the foot down and see what happens. Just to point out, I've not actually inflated the fabric size. When I made the cut file, I had it cut at exactly the same size as the basting stitch. So the tack down stitch isn't really needed. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on to step 3 for this first heart. And that's what the machine has moved on to now, because it thinks it's stitching each design separately. So I'm just going to, I'm doing all this in white. So I'm going to put the foot down and carry on, and it should now do the blanket stitch. What I might actually do is skip to step 3 for both of the other hearts, because like I say, I don't really need the tack down because I've not made my fabric bigger. The only time you normally have a tack down is because you normally put in a bigger piece of fabric on, you tack it down and then you cut it with scissors. But I've made my cut files in the ScanNCut, so I could actually, you know, just skip step 2 on each of these designs. So now it's going to move on to the next one, and it thinks it's doing the basting stitch, which I've already done. So I'm going to hit the plus icon. I'm going to skip step 5 because that's just a placement stitch that's exactly the same size, which I don't need. And I'm going to go to step 6, which is the blanket stitch for this second heart. And I'm going to do that for the remaining, you know, for this one and the next one. So if you want to stay with me, stay with me. If not, just skip forward. It's moved on to the next step, but I've already done the placement. I've already done the basting stitch. I'm not doing the placement. So again, I'm going to hit the plus on the reel and just jump to the blanket stitch. Put the foot down and go. Okay, so that's all 3 applique hearts all sewn down it's now moving on to the flowers. So I may fast forward this bit, but basically I'm going to stitch 3 flowers in a pale blue, and I'm going to use the white again for the centres. I'm just going to change my thread, take the white out, put the blue in and carry on. Okay, so that's finished. So here it is. So from a design I got for free, and then I created my printout, there is the finished design. So I'm just going to unhoop it. And then this is cutaway stabilizer. So I'm just going to fold it to give myself some guidelines for where to cut. Hopefully I'll be able to see these creases, and I can cut this stabilizer away without cutting through the stitches or the card. And this is going to go on the front of here. Now what I might do, I might cut another 5-inch scallop square, because I don't like how these on the fold are not like the full scallop. So I'm probably just going to cut another 5-inch scallop, which I'll stick flat on there. And then this is going to go on here. But the reason I put these holes in is because I'm going to thread some ribbon through. So I've got some pink ribbon. I've got some blue ribbon. Let's see what's going to be nice. And I've got deep pink. I think that's too deep. You could use baker's twine, maybe double it up and put baker's twine through it. I quite like this dark one. If I've got enough of this dark blue, I might use that. I know the blue's paler, but I think it might go better than this pink, because this pink's kind of got a glittery side on one side. If it was all this colour on both sides, I might have used that, but let's see. Don't know if we've got enough. Probably have. So I'm going to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to go in and out of these little holes that I made. So just weaving in and out. Hopefully this is going to work out. And I'm going to come up through this one. So I've just gone across the back. You know, you could cut separate pieces if you want and stick it down on the back to save on ribbon, but I'm going to go down and up. I've got far too much there, so let's see if we can pull it back a bit. And then pull this one. So I'm going to cut that off. Hope this is still recording, because I'm not using my normal setup, so I can't actually see what's going on. So I'm just going to tie a bow. Now this could be a Valentine's project. That's not very good, is it? It could just be a birthday project. That's a bit better. Make the bow a little bit smaller. These are not my fabric scissors, these are my paper scissors, and I shouldn't be using them. And then, as I say, that is going to go on the front of there, but I'm going to cut another 5-inch scallop square. So I'll do that, and then I'll take a picture of it. And then I think what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to raise this one up on 3D foam. So I'll, as I say, cut another 5-inch scallop square and stick that flat on the front. Then I'll pop this one up on the dimension, on the foam, and pop that on top. And then I'll take a picture of it for the thumbnail, and hopefully you'll be able to see it better. But I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you've learned something. Please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.